So, to start chapter 9.3, we're going to talk a little bit about how a monopoly's market power influences its decision making. The first thing to note is that monopolies are firms with market power, and like perfectly competitive firms, their goal is to maximize profit. The question, though, is how they do that. Unlike in perfect competition, market power that the monopoly has influences the price that they set. Before, with a perfectly competitive firm, we said that the marginal revenue was always equal to the price because the firm didn't have market power. Now we're throwing away that assumption. So, how are they making their input decisions now? How much will they choose to produce? Just like before, just like the perfectly competitive case, and going forward, when we look at oligopolies, the profit maximization condition will always be when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. The question then is, will monopolists produce more or less than in identically perfectly competitive industry? The answer is less. How does it become less? Well, they have markup prices that they charge. Uh, the Lerner index is sort of how economists think about how much market power the firm has through its markup. Uh, so, how do we compute this Lerner index? We start with the definition of marginal revenue, and then we set it equal to marginal cost, just like before. We have marginal revenue equals P plus the change in P over the change over the change in Q times Q, and set that equal to marginal cost. We're going to multiply the marginal revenue side of the equation by price over price. This doesn't change anything. If you were thinking about it strictly as an algebra problem, whenever you have something over itself, that's just going to equal 1. So when we add that to our marginal revenue equation, it doesn't change anything. We do some manipulation of the algebra, and so we have this P over P term here. We put one of the P's over our Q, and we keep the numerator outside, and then we have this term here in brackets. This term is the markup. It ends up equaling 1 over the elasticity of demand. So the markup itself ends up being negative 1 over the elasticity of demand. In other words, as demand becomes more elastic, the markup falls. Why is this the case? It's because the more sensitive consumers are to the price, the more elastic their demand is, the less that a firm can upcharge them, right? If you have very little preference between Coke and Pepsi, but you slightly prefer Coke, so you consume Coke regularly, but then Coke raises its price, you would probably consider switching to Pepsi. Coke has a limited ability to charge a markup because a lot of people are mostly indifferent between the two of them. In the perfectly competitive case, they couldn't do this because the products were exactly the same. But now that we're talking about situations where the firms are able to differentiate profits, they have some ability to do a markup, but that markup is dependent on how elastic consumers' demand is for the products.